Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, Shadowrun Read. Today I'll be doing a recommendations video for adult fiction. So this is like all over the genre. I have thrillers, I have fantasies, I have contemporaries, I have kind of all over the place in terms of my recommendations, and I haven't done a recommendations video in so long that I really wanted to do one. So yeah, let's just get right into it. So for this video, I only have 9 books that I am recommending. I wanted to do a 10th one, but I couldn't find one that I was like absolutely loved and I really want to recommend. So 9 books it is, guys. Like I have 9 books on here. So the first book that I really want to recommend is Pretty Girls by KARIN. This one I gave 4 stars. This is about a girl called Claire, where 20 years ago her sister Julia went missing, and there's no notes, nothing, and it was basically a cold case. Now 20 years later, a new girl has disappeared, and Claire really believes that both disappearances are somehow linked. And as she digs into the past, she discovers all these secrets about her sister that she never knew about. And why I love this book, it was so good. There were just so many plot twists and turns that I just never saw coming. I feel like some authors, when they do plot twists and turns where like you never see coming, it's because they're so outlandish that you just like never suspected it. But this was not the case for this book at all. Like everything was just like, oh my god, that made so much sense. I just didn't see it coming, and it was just done so well. And this book was just such a fast page turner, and I couldn't stop reading it because I want to find out what happens next. I do believe there's some trigger warnings. I have read this book a very long time ago, so I don't really remember like what the trigger warnings are, but there were definitely some disturbing elements in this book for sure. But for what they are exactly, I would definitely check out Goodreads for people who have put trigger warnings on there, because I don't remember. I'm really bad about trigger warnings, but there's definitely some trigger warnings in this book for sure, like some really messed up, some very disturbing things, 100%. But at the same time, like thrillers, I feel like you need to come into them knowing that there might be something twisty about it, because they're thrillers. But yeah, I highly recommend it if you're looking for like a fast page turner, if you're looking for something like super twisty and turny, something a little bit disturbing as well if you like that. But yeah, I really recommend this book if you love thrillers. The next book that I want to recommend is The Library of the Unwritten by AJ Hackwith. This one I gave 4.5 stars. This is an adult fantasy, and it really reminds me of Sorcery of Thrones, but like an adult, more dense version of it. It's about a library in hell that houses these books that have never been written by the authors for whatever reason, and it is up to the librarian to track down any characters that kind of grow restless from these unwritten books. So this book follows a girl called Claire, who is the head librarian for this Library of the Unwritten, who one day something happens and she finds herself having to track down Hero, who is a character in a book. And things go awry when she ends up crossing paths with an angel. His name is Ramiel, who firmly believes that she houses the Devil's Bible, which is supposed to be this book that has a lot of power or something. So the angelic forces is like, for sure we don't want them to have it, and she's like, I'm just trying to find this fucking guy, guys, like this hero character for this book. And of course, like things just kind of go awry, and it is such a fascinating ride. So like I said already, this book really reminded me of Sorcery of Thrones, which is one of my favorite books of all time. So that was actually one of the main reasons why I love this book so much, just because it's like a more dense, more adult version of it. I also felt like the characters were definitely the highlight of this book, and while I don't typically enjoy multiple POVs, because this book does follow a plethora of characters, but I feel like the way how it was executed in this book was really well done, because each character was actually really fascinating to read about. I also really love the theology element of this book, because there were just a variety of different mythologies and religions. Like there was about the Christianity, obviously, with like heaven and hell. Then there was like Valhalla, which is like Norse mythology, and then there's also these old religions that were introduced as well that you just never ever heard about before. So I just felt like it was very inclusive in that sense, and it was just really interesting to see like all these different religions and theology that were just mashed up together. So the only reason why I didn't give this book 5 stars was because it did feel a bit draggy at times and a bit slow. Like I said already, it's a more dense version of Sorcery of Thrones, and I feel like that was very obvious in this book. But overall though, I still really loved it, so I highly recommend this book. Then the next book that I want to recommend is one that I just finished recently, and that is Behind Closed Doors by B.A. Paris. This one I gave 5 stars. This book was just insane. This book follows a seemingly perfect couple, Jack and Grace, where they just seem perfect for each other, and also looks like they are deeply in love. But as you look closer, you realize that some things just don't add up. And this book was just insane. I was so invested in the story right from the start. It was super immersive. I just wanted to know what was going to happen next, and to finding out like how did Claire end up in this situation was just really fascinating to read about. And I feel like this book just really made me question everyone's motive, because if someone like Jack was just so perfect from what you like the surface level, like, and like in reality it's just like wild, like what is everyone thinking? You know, you never know what anyone's thinking, and I feel like this book really made me question everyone, to be honest. And I also felt like the ending was extremely well done. Like I feel like for most thrillers you don't want to know what's going to happen next, or like you don't want to know how the book will end. And for this one I feel like I was able to guess how the book will end, because I feel like it only really made sense in one way, but the execution of it was incredibly well done. So yeah, I definitely recommend if you're looking for another like twisty thriller, super suspenseful thriller novel. The next one that I want to recommend is another adult fantasy, and that is The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. This one I gave 4.5 stars. So this book is a little bit hard to describe what it's about, but it basically follows a guy called Zachary, and there's a book. This book is about a book, and there are secret worlds and secret societies. And I feel like that's the vaguest synopsis I can give you guys without spoiling anything, but I love this book. It was incredibly beautifully well written. I love the fact that there were stories about the book in this book, and that makes any sense, and the way how it was written too, because it was stories about the book in this book, but also alternating with Zachary's POV. And I don't know, it just was really fascinating to read about. I would say the beginning was a little bit confusing though, because you're introduced to all these different stories, but you don't really know how these stories played a role in this book, and it didn't really come together until like halfway through the book, I want to say. But when it does come together, guys, it was done so well. And I feel like the way how the book was written too was just really unique, because I never really read a book like that before, but I loved it. And the best part was definitely finding out how everything came together and how they're all connected. And yeah, like it was just really beautifully written, beautiful prose, a very whimsical book. And I definitely need to go read her debut book, which is The Night Circus, because now I just want to read more of her works. But the only reason why I didn't give this book 5 stars was because it was a little bit confusing in the beginning, and also there was a romance in here that I was like meh about, because I cared more about Zachary's adventure through this magical doorways and secret societies than I was about the romance. And I feel like the romance kind of took me away from it, but it's not like I didn't like the romance, I just didn't really care much for it, like compared to everything else. Then the next book that I'm recommending is The Far Field by Madhuri Vijay. This book I gave 4 stars. This book was such a surprise to me, because I was really hesitating picking it up. I just didn't like, I wanted to expand my horizons when I picked up this book. So this is a literary fiction, it's a cultural book set in India, so I wanted to just expand my reading experience, which is why I picked this book for my book of the month many months ago. But I was really hesitant, and I actually really loved it. So this book follows a girl called Shalini who decides to seek out answers after her mother passes away, and she is somehow convinced that this Kashmiri salesperson that she knew as a child is somehow connected to the whole thing. And she finds herself in the midst of a very volatile political situation in Kashmiri. I feel like this book, what stood out to me a lot was the beautiful prose and the writing style. I also felt like the characters were super unique, because this book, and it's weird because they all had very like chilly personalities and demeanors, but I think because of where this book is set and like the situation surrounding it, their personalities made sense to me, and it just worked really well. But honestly, it was like the writing style and the characters. I feel like the plot itself was interesting to read, but I was mostly there for the characters. So if you're more of a character driven person, or if you care more about the writing, then I definitely recommend this one. Okay, then the next book that I want to recommend is one I feel like a lot of people loved as well, and that is Nightingale by KRISTIN Hannah. This one I gave 5 stars, obviously. So this book is set in World War II in France, where it follows 2 sisters where they find themselves at very different situations during this time period. One sister finds herself being forced to house a Nazi soldier, and the other sister finds herself joining the rebellion. And the book just really follows both sisters' journey and how much the war changed them. I absolutely love this book because it is beautifully written. It has full of well-developed characters and a really good plot as well. And both sisters were actually so different from each other, but the way how they were crafted and their personality just really shone through. And not only that, but the way how they grew from their experiences and the way how they changed was just so riveting to read about. The only downside to this book was the ending. I'm not going to go into it because spoilers, but like it's acceptable, but it was just, yeah, I'm just not going to talk about it. That was the only downside to it, but I overall, like, it still didn't deter me from a 5-star read, like 100%, like still 5-star, very solid book. It's also very emotional, so be prepared to cry because I definitely teared up a bit. I don't know if I cried. I don't remember. I read this book a really long time ago, but I definitely teared up. It made me very emotional, so if you're an emotional reader, then like, yeah, definitely be prepared and get some like tissue papers on hand or something because it is a ride. The next book is one that I think a lot of people have also read and really enjoyed as well, and that is Room by Emma Donoghue. This one I gave 5 stars. So this book is told in the perspective of a 5-year-old boy who has lived his entire life in a tiny room with his mom because she was kidnapped by old Nick. And then one day his mom devises an escape plan that really relies on his bravery as well as luck to actually pull off. And this book was phenomenal. I thought it was incredibly unique to have a book like this written in the perspective of a 5-year-old. I also read this book or listened to it on audiobook, and I feel like the narrator did a really good job with just bringing that 5-year-old like innocence and personality to life. And it was just really eerie at the same time to kind of read what he was going through or like his surroundings from a 5-year-old perspective. And I feel like the author did a really good job with, because it was from Jack's perspective, like the 5-year-old boy, there were just so many things about this world that I never really thought about, but until it was like through a 5-year-old lens, I was like, oh yeah, like that's super interesting to think about. So this book definitely made me think a lot, and it made me realize like the things I take for granted. So I don't know, I mean, this book was just really unique because of the perspective. I think that is like the main reason why I'm like, this book is just so interesting and so vivid, but also the plot itself is just super fascinating. All right, so the next book is another KRISTIN Hanna book, and that is The Great Alone. This one I gave 5 stars. To be honest, KRISTIN Hanna is like my favorite author of all times. I don't think I've read any books from her that I did not give less than 5 stars, or like maybe 4.5 stars I think, but every book that I read from her I have absolutely adored. So this book is set in the 1970s. It follows a girl called Lenny and her parents, where they're uprooted from their place and they decide to move to Alaska for a fresh start. This book is about resilience, survival, and kind of like human frailty, as Lenny and her mother must survive in the dark winter nights while facing Lenny's father's deteriorating mental state as a prisoner of war survivor. I love this book, as you guys know. I mean, this is why I'm recommending this book for you guys. This book was just, I feel like the characters in this book were just so rich and well developed, and it was so easy for me to become invested in their stories. This book also spans like, I want to say like 1 to 2 decades I think, so it was really easy for me to become invested with them because I'm basically reading like years and years of their lives and just like seeing how they grow and mature and develop. I was also enamored with the lushness of the setting as well as KRISTIN's writing with Alaska. So this book I actually did a whole very in-depth video book review on, so I'll link that above in case you want to check that out. I think I did it, like I actually watched it again recently, and I feel like this did a really good job of explaining like my thoughts for it. I have spoilers and non-spoiler section, so definitely check that out. And I feel like after watching the video recently, like yesterday or 2 days ago, I realized I kind of want to go back into it because I feel like I should do like a decent job of video reviews. So anyways, check that out. Let me know what you guys think about it. Do you guys think I should continue with video reviews? There's a lot of work to do, but I feel like they're also very what's that word, like it's not like time sensitive. Like anyone who picks it up can read or watch the video review, whereas certain videos like TBRs or like monthly wrap-ups are just more time sensitive because it's books that I read like that month, and then you know what I mean. Yeah, so let me know down below if you guys want me to continue that or like start that up again. I haven't really done that in a very long time, but I think maybe I should go back and do it because I thought I did a good job, guys. So anyways, just check it out. Let me guys know what you guys think about my review for The Great Alone by KRISTIN Hanna. But anyways, and the last book that I really want to recommend to you guys is Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine by Gail Honeyman. This book I gave 5 stars as well. It's about a woman, her name is Eleanor Oliphant, obviously, who struggles with social skills. And one day a fellow coworker called Raymond starts to kind of slowly bring her out of her shell, where she learns to find friendship and possibly even love. I love this book mainly because of the characters and the story. It was just really easy to fall in love with them. The characters especially were just so lovable and highly entertaining. I really love Eleanor's quirkiness and her tendency to always take things very literal, it definitely made the book very amusing at the same time, especially when there was like a cultural reference and she didn't get the cultural reference, so she would take it very literally and be like, what is this? And I don't know, it just made the book very, very entertaining for me. But my favorite part about this book was definitely the character growth, like her character growth, and how she went from a very sheltered, well-managed life where everything was like timed so perfectly with each other to being able to actually open up to the people around her and really just learning how to enjoy life. This book was really well done, really well written, and great characters, like 100% like characters as well. So if you're also interested in like a character driven book, this is another one for you. So anyways, these are all the books that I recommend you guys. If you're interested in picking up more adult fiction, let me know down below if you have any other recommendations for me. Do you have any videos, ideas that you guys want me to do for recommendations video, like sci-fi or like manga series? I've been reading a lot of mangas and graphic novels recently. Let me know down below if there's any like genres that you guys want me to do recommendations for. And if you have read any of these books that I recommended, let me know if you agree with me or if you don't agree with me as well. If there are books on here that I didn't recommend and you guys think that I should pick it up and I haven't yet, let me know down below as well. But as always, if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe down below, don't follow me on Twitter and Instagram, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!